special committee of the whole, and we've got through the thunderstorms and stuff. So we're going to start right away. And what I'll do first is I want to first of all thank my my council colleagues who have been chair in the past few weeks. They've done a great job. So I hope you have some patience with me tonight. I'll do the best I can, but I think we'll get through it. So first of all, I'll do a roll call of my council colleagues and either raise your hand or say, I'm here. So I'll ask for Councillor Alfred.
Present.
Councillor Allen.
Present.
Councillor Dwyer.
Present.
Councillor McKenna.
Present.
Councillor McGuire.
Present.
And your worship, Panko.
Present.
Yeah, and I see the CEO, Morris, is here. So can you inform us what staff are with us tonight?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Director Manhire, Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, Jennifer Miller. We have our Senior Planner, Carl Grenke, and our Director of Corporate Services, Carrie Costello, and our Deputy Clerk, Nadine Bennett.
Great. Thank you all for coming. So we'll start away. Is there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Mayor Panko.
Yes, potential resolution support for public health guidelines. I'd like that as priority item B.
Yep. So noted.
Thank you.
Any disclosure of monetary interest arising from the agenda? Okay. We have no adoption of minutes. The CEO director's report, we're going to have our regular committee of the whole following this, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to that one. We have no correspondence items. There's no in camera, so we'll get right to the priority issues, which is Bill 197, amendment to the procedural bylaw, report 2020-92, and I see Director Costello here. So are you going to present that, or is Deputy Clerk Bennett going to do that?
I will happily present it for you.
Good.
So as council is aware, things are starting to reopen and the same goes for municipalities. So we were informed late July of Bill 197 that came into effect, which is an amending act to give some amending provisions in the Municipal Act to allow for electronic participation for council and committee members beyond the times of a declared emergency. So as council will recall, there was emergency orders put in place in March that gave council the power to hold virtual meetings, and they still gave access to the public, which still holds the spirit of a public meeting. So we're at the point now with the pandemic where we're starting to rewind and undo some of the things that we have done or have the potential of doing so if council concurs. So council passed their had a state of emergency declared after the province declared their state of emergency. Since then, the province has now lifted their state of emergency. The town, however, still does remain under a declared emergency. Our bylaw, which gave council the authority to have virtual meetings, was done so under this emergency provision, and hence the need to have the special council meeting this evening for council to make a decision on the future of electronic participation. So I thank you for allowing us to have this special committee of the whole in council this evening to deal with this matter. So to continue for having our meetings electronically, council would be required to amend our procedural bylaw, one to allow for the use of e-participation if you so choose, and to allow e-participation in open and or closed meetings, and as well for you to determine whether electronic participation will provide for quorum. So those are things within your control now. Previously with Bill 68, those were things that were not in council's control. They were dictated to council, but since the pandemic and Bill 197, they have now opened up these provisions to allow council to make those decisions. So this does not pertain to the Police Services Board or the Library Board. As you're well aware, those are both covered under separate legislation. So to this time, what I'm looking for from council is direction for staff. One, to look at returning to in-person meetings. The second is your options for participating in electronic meetings. And the third is proxy voting. The first option for returning to in-person meetings, there was discussion at our previous committee of the whole. There was members of council who were looking forward to having more in-person meetings. So looking for council's direction on this item. Media and the public could still attend, and that still serves the spirit of the legislation. I think Councillor McGuire was asking that question, if the public still could attend virtually, and yes, they can, Councillor McGuire. So looking for council's direction on when they would like to return to in-person meetings, if they choose to do that, or if they would like to remain having electronic meetings. That's an option for council as well. Or we can maintain the status quo for council. And just to reiterate, this is for council and our committee meetings. This just isn't for council. So whatever council decides tonight will be the same for our committee meetings. I just wanted to throw that in there because I know that there's been, especially with a couple of committees, a want and a need for having in-person meetings. So we could return to in-person meetings on August 24th or another date to be determined by council and not allow for e-participation. It would just be full in-person meetings, the same as we did before. We could just have e-participation, or we could return to in-person meetings and allow for council members to participate electronically. Of course, with any of these provisions, notice requirements still would apply. If we do allow for e-participation, I would recommend that we allow the members to be counted as quorum. And as well, we allow for members to attend closed sessions electronically. I think with the pandemic, it has taught us that we still have been maintaining our business and doing business, and especially moving to the different forum for closed meetings. The third thing that I'm going to be looking for council to look at is proxy voting. It's not something I'm looking for council to make a decision on tonight. The proxy voting is very similar to what we've done with past elections. We allow one member of council to vote on your behalf. Again, it would only be one council member would only be able to do a proxy vote for another council member. This isn't something I'm looking for your answer for tonight. I'm not 100% comfortable with proxy voting at this point. I would like to see maybe a legal opinion and have maybe more discussions with my fellow clerks on proxy voting before I bring that to the table for council to decide on. So the report's been prepared for you. I hope you've taken a little bit of time to review it, but basically looking for council's direction on a future of our meetings.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll say so. Councillor McKenna, and then Councillor Allen, and then Councillor Alford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Costello, I just a point of clarification. Do we, in order to have the state of emergency prevention has been lifted, we still have it in Smiths Falls. Do we have the legal right to meet after this if we decide not to have electronic meetings? Can the town of Smiths Falls, under our state of emergency, continue to meet until August 24th without changing our procedures?
So whatever comes out of tonight's discussion, Councillor McKenna, will be done via bylaw to make it legal after this special committee of the whole. So
if I may, Mr. Chair, if we were to say, in order to get us legally to August 24th, when we resume face-to-face, we would have to pass a bylaw tonight in order to, let's say the meeting tonight, and maybe there's another one next week before the 24th, we would have to do that without, that would not necessarily bind us going forward after the 24th.
No, it would very clearly stipulate that council was allowing e-participation up until whichever date. And a good example, Councillor McKenna, I believe the recommendation for the county is allowing e-participation for another 6 months. And after that, they're going to revisit it. So council could also look at something like that and allow e-participation, or only do e-participation for another 6 months, at which time they'll revisit it. So that's an option as well. But council can, and the bylaw would stipulate that council would be holding e-participation meetings until for the dates, and we could stipulate the dates and at which point they would then switch over to whichever means council decides, whether it be e-meetings and in-person meetings combined, or just in-person meetings or just e-meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Councillor Allen?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having in-person council meetings, and the fact that it's coming on the 24th, I'd be happy to do it next week. But I'm also happy if my colleagues prefer to wait till the 24th. I understand there's some protocols that you're concerned about having in place, but I don't think in our chamber we're going to have a lot of problems to social distance and, you know, carry on well. And I don't know about others, but for me, especially with my background, body language and being able to communicate, you know, completely is all part of good conversation. And I don't find virtual meetings are as effective as in person.
Director Costello, you had something?
Thank you. I just wanted to elaborate, and thank you, Councillor Allen, for mentioning the council chambers. Deputy Clerk Bennett and I went up there on last Thursday and with the measuring tape. And just so council is aware, the council chambers can accommodate all of you with some revisions, obviously, to keep social distancing in mind. It will accommodate all of you, as well as the mayor, who would sit in the front where the director's table was. We've turned it, and it will accommodate CAO Morris and our deputy clerk, and as well as whichever staff person is presenting. Other staff could be accommodated in the lounge and still watch the proceedings and just attend the chamber when it's their time to present. Deputy Clerk Bennett has already gone ahead, if council chooses to go this route, and done up some draft provisions or draft protocols for council regarding entering, exiting, distancing, masks, and all of that, should council choose to have in-person meetings in the chambers. So thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Allen.
Okay, anything else, Lorraine?
No, just that I don't know if we want to talk about all the things at once. I am not in favor of proxy voting at all.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Alfred?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I am too, like many of my colleagues, looking forward to having in-person meetings again. And I agree with Councillor Allen that a lot of the communication is lost doing it this way, although it has been very helpful to get us through this emergency. My preference would be to not necessarily August 24th be the date, but that when Smith Falls declares their emergency over, then I would be comfortable returning to in-person meetings. With regard to the council chambers, and thank you for doing the math on whether we can all fit in there, but I don't know if there's been, it is old. We know that it is, I'm not sure of what the condition or air quality would be in that with the winter months coming. So that would be a concern of mine. If you've puzzled out how we can all be there and socially distance, that's wonderful information. But again, I'm not entirely comfortable. We're all aware of it's hot in the summer, it's cold in the winter, there's not much circulation. Some of our staff react to whatever is floating around in the air. So I think that would be a concern for me. But again, I'm anxious to go back to in-person meetings, but I think we might be well served to wait until we declare our emergency over. With regard to proxies, no, not in favor. And I don't know if we want to discuss the third one, which is allowing e-participation. Saying I've got notes here. Allowing e-participation past the emergency by one or more council members. And I am also not in favor of that. I think the public expects us to see us at work. I do think it opens the door for, which could be a slippery slope, that, you know, I'm on vacation in Ireland for 2 months and I'm phoning it in because council and committee of the whole is, again, only half of the job. We all have committees that we participate on. And so I think that would be lost as well. In terms of the engagement numbers that you gave us, if we're going to continue to live stream with the new product eScribe, I don't think that those engagement numbers will probably be affected at all. So that's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Councillor Dwyer, McGuire, and then Peko.
Thank you. I have no problem taking the staff recommendation on option number 1. However, like Councillor Alfred, I think it should coincide with the date at which we rescind the date of emergency. I do like, long-term, I like the flexibility of having the option for e-participation, mostly on the grounds that I think we can all agree that there's a second wave of this coming. And I think in order to prepare ourselves accordingly, we should leave that option available to those that need it. Some of us may be more comfortable attending in person, even with the social distancing provisions, and others might not. And I think that's the reality in which we find ourselves living in today. I, quite frankly, enjoy e-participation. I like being able to see each and every single one of you face to face. While we do this, it's pretty hard to miss someone's facial expression in this format, which I think is helpful. But I don't disagree that there's always advantages to being face-to-face with someone. Certainly being able to meet in person with the applicants. It's not uncommon for us to have delegates in the gallery who want to speak to us before or after a meeting. That is definitely something that we're losing here. So I get that there's a desire and a strong urge to go back to in-person meetings, and I like that, but I think we need to prepare ourselves for the eventuality that we're going to have a second wave. And maybe I'll pause there before I address the other 2 points, because I think
Director Costello had a comment.
No, thank you, Councillor Dwyer. That could be an option for council as well, to only allow e-participation during a declared emergency, whether it be federal, provincial, or municipal. So that's an option as well. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's consensus, we can come back to that later, but I would make a motion to take that as an option to allow for e-participation wherein there's a declared state of emergency, because I think that's something that we're going to need to consider. Option for participation in e-meetings. Again, I'm comfortable doing that and counting membership as quorum in the state of emergency. But I can appreciate where Councillor Alfred is coming from, wherein if somebody is out of country for an extended period of time and misses their 3 months of meetings, but they haven't technically because they're participating online, that could get dicey. At the same time, I do think back to times where we've had councillors who we have had to make accommodations for because they're unable to attend the council chambers because it's not accessible. And I think maybe working in some sort of provision that allows for e-participation due to an accommodation need might be something that's worth considering, because I think it allows us to continue to get the valued input of that council member without them physically being present. And obviously it's not something that we all desire or strive to use, but sometimes it is necessary, particularly given our physical layout of that building. The last one, I believe, is proxy voting. Yeah, I can't say I'm a big fan of that. Not that I don't trust and love my council colleagues, but I don't know. There's something about that just seems philosophically undemocratic. So I'm going to say no, thank you on that one. And
thank
that's
you.
all I have for now.
Thanks for that. Councilor McGuire, you're next.
Thanks, Councillor Rennan. Really excited to get this report. Thank you, Director Costello, and everybody that worked on it. I definitely support option 1A, return to in-person meetings and allow for council members to attend electronically. I think, if we've got a quarantine, as long as this emergency is going on, same lines as Councillor Dwyer and everyone else, that giving that option is important, but also, the sooner we can get back and get people in the chambers, I think the better, because it's like tonight, I've got a really sketchy connection. It keeps freezing up and I'm going to have to defer an item because I don't think I'm going to have the quality to get through it. So being able to do that in person is going to be great. For 2, option for participating in electronic meetings, I'm a little bit concerned about the closed session, and I'd like to propose to council that we tweak that a little bit, because when we do it by Zoom and or teleconference, the teleconference technology that I'm aware of that we're using doesn't give us the opportunity to see who's on the call. So we hear everybody beep in, but if somebody comes in before the moderator comes in, or if two people come in at the same time, it's really difficult to track that. So I would like to see something for closed sessions that just gives us that, the same on the Zoom, where we can see everybody that's on the call. We know everybody that's on the closed session call, because I think that's a bit of a just a flaw in the system right now that we should close. So I don't know if people have strong feelings on that, but that's one thing I'd like to see tweaked on it. And the proxy voting, I agree with everyone else that it's just it just doesn't. It seems like a kind of a different direction to go in, and I don't see the need for it right now. So I wouldn't support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pinkout.
Thank you. I guess like my colleagues here, I think it's, I agree. It'd be great to get back to in-person meetings. I mean, if it wasn't for all the ghosts of mayors past up here with me in the council chambers, it'd be pretty lonely each week. But so I look forward to reconvening with my colleagues in a physically distant, socially responsible way. But I also agree that we need to provide some accommodation, and recognizing, as Councilor Dwyer said, this pandemic is still with us. The risk that any one of us could be potentially quarantined or sick and want to participate but can't participate in person. So I think we need to enable that for the foreseeable future, whether it's tied to a state of emergency or we simply set it for 6 months and review it again at that point in time, depending on the environment. If we decided to end the state of emergency, we would have to decide whether or not we continue on meeting, but we have, or continue on with that manner. And going forward, I'm perfectly happy to allow quorum to occur through e-participation if necessary. And yeah, I too am not supportive of proxy voting. I think it's just potentially too problematic.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's my turn, and so I got a couple of questions on the report. And the first question I have is, did this come up at the emergency control group, and was it discussed?
No, Bill 197, not in any great length. I'd let them know that the bill had come out and that council had to give further direction on many of the items.
So they had no opinion on whether it's a good idea or it's not a good idea? No. And also, was Dr. Stewart consulted in terms of the physical space that we have there?
No, she wasn't.
Okay, so what I would hope that before we do that someone from public health comes and looks at the council chambers and helps us out with that. And you know, I think that for me, August 24th is far too early. I mean, we're going to be talking about a motion later tonight to remind our citizens that we need to be vigilant and we need to be cognizant of the virus. So schools coming back, and you know, there's a lot of stress out there. We have grandchildren out there. I'm sure that all the parents are really worried and trying to figure out what they're going to do. And we have staff that have kids. You know, for me, the Facebook or the Zoom meetings have been working very well. You can see my facial expression. I cannot not see your facial expression. The communication is pretty apparent. And so I think it's been really working very, very well. The uptake's been great. And you're never going to get 1,000 people into the council chambers, I'll tell you that. So, you know, for me, the province gave us a tool to use and to keep people safe. And we're going to send a message that we're going to continue to do that. So I would prefer to take this off the table for now, for the foreseeable future. Yeah, we're still in a state of emergency, and I think that after school goes back and once we get into the fall, we'll see how things are going. But for me, these meetings work very, very well. I find we communicate very well. The people, my colleagues that have chaired the meetings have done a great job. And so I don't see what the upside is to going back to a meeting in person. And you know, we're going to talk about passing around paper. I haven't seen the protocols, and I know staff is working very hard on trying to put things together so to make it safe, but I haven't seen that. And no fault to you. You know, that's going to take some time. But to schedule an in-person meeting in August, I think is totally not the way to go. August is far too early, and on the proxy voting thing, that's way out of the box. And you know, as one of my former colleagues used to say, if you can't be here, then you don't have a say. And I don't disagree with that. And so that's my 2 cents, you guys. And Councilor McGuire, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if, like, I trust staff's judgment on their ability to make the environment safe. We've got the social distancing. I think that when we're putting campaigns out there to support our small businesses and get out into patios and that kind of thing, you know, we can do that safely. I think we should be able to meet safely. And I don't think anybody was suggesting we compromise that to make this happen. I think for the meetings where, you know, I've had something to say and I haven't been seen because the screen's smaller or the connection cuts out, it's definitely, I think that's the advantage. That's definitely the advantage. And yeah, I'm really excited to get back on the 24th. And I don't think that safety has to be a compromise on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Mayor Paykel?
Yeah, one thing I just realized, if we have a hybrid model where we have some members of council and staff in the council chambers and we have others who are operating virtually, everybody is then operating virtually in some capacity, I would assume. And the issue there will be the audio. We'll overlap and delay of audio if we all have a device in front of us within the council chambers. So there, I don't know if there's a way around that, but if someone is participating electronically, the only way I can see them, of course, is through my iPad and vice versa. So I'm wondering if we have a plan to work around that.
Director Costello?
We've only spoke about the kind of the IT requirements very generally, knowing that we would have video and audio, but that's a great point, Mayor Panko, and definitely something I'll dig into a little more with the audio, because you are correct. So I will look into that and get back to council first thing tomorrow.
Councilor Dwyer, you had your hand up.
I did, thanks. I don't envy the task that Director Costello has in front of her right now. I mean, the coordination and the logistics of this, and Dave as well, because I'm sure Dave's listening, is absolutely astronomical. And I'm sure that there are ways we can do it. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And I know that there is a great deal of scuttlebutt within the municipal world about options for figuring this out. I'm attending a webinar myself on Wednesday to have this very question answered. So I'm wondering if there's consensus from council to approach this in kind of 2 phases. One, that we allow for e-participation to continue as long as Sean has declared a state of emergency. And that may get us through until the 24th if Director Costello feels that she has a manner for which we can participate through a hybrid model and do so. Otherwise, we continue to do so into September until such time as that model has been figured out. The problem is if we don't pass a resolution tonight to allow for so then as of next Monday, we all have to walk into the council chambers. So this is it. There's so much information coming out from the province so quickly. and things seem to change very rapidly. And our staff capacity to manage something like this is just not as robust as some of the other larger municipalities who will probably find a solution before we do that we can piggyback on. So I would motion that we pass a resolution tonight to allow for the e-participation during the declared state of emergency, with some of the other amendments for discussion point 2 as well, as part of that, but then that we revisit this based on a follow-up report from Director Costello.
Okay, thanks for that. Councilor McGuire, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Councilor Brennan. I think we're maybe going outside of the scope of what the recommendations are tonight. I think the hybrid model gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives the opportunity for the people that are more comfortable to stay home. It gives the people that would rather get to the council chamber access to the chamber. I think we're kind of overthinking the operations side of things a little bit. Like, you know, we've got the Zoom meeting. You can phone into a Zoom meeting. You set up the conference call on the table, and the camera side maybe is trickier, but I think a lot of offices have been doing this now for a few months, and I don't know why we'd be any different. I think my understanding is Rita Lakes had a meeting where they allowed people to come in today. I don't think we need to worry about being the first on this. But I do think that staff have brought us some solid recommendations tonight that I support 1A, and I would like to see if there's consensus for a little bit greater scrutiny on the criteria for a closed meeting from the rest of council, because I would like to see that beefed up a little bit before we go into the next phase of this.
Thank you. Councilor McKenna? You're muted, Peter.
I think we're getting close to consensus. I'm not necessarily want to link. I just rather extend this for 6 months, get back to face, but for those who want, and for those who want to hook up via Zoom, then allow that. I wouldn't link it to the state of emergency. A number of municipalities are declaring the state of emergency is over, and I don't know if there's a reason why, other than this, why Smith Falls is still in a state of emergency. But if we could, like, if we decide, or the mayor decides to end that at September 1, we would have to go to face. So but I think Councillor Dwyer has a good point. Let's get it worked out. If it's not August 24th, we don't have the ability to meet face-to-face, and for those who aren't comfortable to hook up by Zoom, then it'll be the week after or whatever. But I'm ready to go back to face-to-face when the technology is ready, so that, and about I only want to do it for 6 months. I'm not sold on electronic. I'm assuming we're going to meet, if one of us are disabled and unable to climb stairs, I think we can find other ways to accommodate it besides face, like moving our meetings to a more accommodating facility. So I'm no proxy. Don't link this to the state of emergency, because the mayor may or may not be ready to lift that. We go 6 months, but we start meeting face to face as soon as staff say they've got the ability to do it. And for those who are uncomfortable with that, they can join via Zoom for that 6 months, and we revisit it then.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Alfred, you had your hand up.
I did, thank you, because Chief Cheeseborough mentioned, I think at the last meeting, that the emergency control group was comfortable leaving Smith Falls state of emergency in place until after the children got back to school, and we could gauge whether or not there was going to be results of sending the kids back to school. So that's what I understood him to say. Again, I'm anxious to return to in-person meetings, but at a date yet to be determined. And I think the easiest, cleanest way to do this is either we all stay Zooming, or we all get back together. I think that cuts out a lot of the technical requirements for some of this. We've already dealt with proxy. We know what that looks like. Nobody wants it. And in terms of permitting for quorum. If we're continuing to do that, that's fine, but I'm uncomfortable doing it in closed sessions for some of the reasons that Councillor McGuire noted, but also because even in our procedural bylaw, it says no notes are to be taken. There is no way to decide if there are notes being taken in closed session when we're on Zoom. So a couple of other things to just keep in track. If the chief, I would prefer to wait until the declared emergency is over before we resume in person, much as I miss y'all, but and I'm uncomfortable with closed sessions electronically.
Okay, thanks for that. So we're sort of a dog's breakfast, and I did come up with another question here because I had it and I neglected to answer it in the report. It states that it has been recommended that we consider these procedural amendments immediately. And from what I understand, that recommendation came from Municipal Affairs and Housing, which seems a little nonsensical to me. I mean, they just passed this thing at the end of July, and they expect us to decide what we're going to do immediately. I mean, my preference would be let's just pass a bylaw to allow the Zoom to continue until we know more. I mean, I'm all for an all in-person meeting, but I just don't see what the upside of continuing or to start meeting in person. What's the upside? What's the downside? Someone gets sick. That's what the downside is. So we're going to be talking about reminding everyone how we have to be vigilant. Well, we should be vigilant, and I think that's an example. So my question is that the case that Municipal Affairs and Housing have a hammer on us to make a decision tonight?
That's correct. I spoke to our municipal advisor last week with the exact same questions that you just asked, Councillor Brennan. And their recommendation, because the state of emergency or the bylaw where we changed our procedural bylaw was based on the emergency order and the province's declaration, since that has been lifted, they recommend that all councils revisit this ASAP.
Is that a recommendation or an order?
It was highly recommended.
Okay. Councillor Dwyer?
Thanks. Two things. I think one, this is life in a pandemic, right? The ministry highly recommends something, and then you're scrambling to try and implement. And that's been the story of our lives since the state of emergency was declared on March 16th. I'm wondering, Chair Brennan, you made a comment about the fact that our state at this point is a bit of a dog's breakfast. And I noticed that Director Costello is frantically taking notes. So I wondered if she could provide us with a synopsis of maybe what we've come to as far as a consensus, just so that we have a starting point to actually move this forward.
Well, there's no to proxy voting.
Okay, yep. Thank you. I think we got that.
Okay. I do have that there is a consensus. At least there was two verbal, and I was watching a lot of shaking heads that if we continue to allow for e-participation to change mechanisms for the closed session, kind of beef that up a little bit.
Okay.
There seems to be quite a few who are okay with remaining with Zoom meetings. With the exception, Councillor McGuire, his main objection right now seems to be with connectivity. I don't know if that seems to be the case. I don't know if we could house him somewhere in the complex here during Mondays, if that's workable for him, if council concurs they want to continue down this route to ensure that Councillor McGuire has better connectivity wherever he is. For the most part, as much as people seem to be wanting to get back to in-person, I think I have at least 4 who stated that they'd rather wait until the emergency's over. What else was there? That's kind of the direction I've got. It is a little bit like a dog's breakfast, Councillor Dwyer, I will admit.
Well, no, I think you've done a great job at summarizing. And unless there is anybody who maybe has a very stark opinion contrary to what Director Costello has suggested, then perhaps we just move forward from there.
Yeah, well, you know, the point is, we can continue the Zoom meetings, and then we don't need to revisit proxy voting, and then we'll revisit in person at an appropriate time. Is everyone okay with that?
With an additional provision, Councillor Brennan, Chair Brennan, that maybe we look at altering the closed meeting protocols if we're going to continue on with virtual meetings. If the council concurs.
Yeah. Councillor Alfred and then Councillor McGuire.
It's just, I've just been reminding myself that we're making this decision for all our committees too. I think August 24th may be too soon for them to resume in-person meetings. I'm thinking about the committees that I'm on.
Yeah.
And it is making the choice for all of them as well. And some of that could pose problems for the larger body in the committee work. It certainly would in a couple that I'm with.
Having just Zoom meetings, you mean?
No, to go back to in-person.
Oh yeah,
that soon.
I agree. So we're making a decision, in my view, to just continue with the Zoom, and then we'll revisit this when we deem it appropriate. Right?
Or when the declared emergency is over. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a declared emergency, and then there's a pandemic. So there's still a pandemic. Councilor McGuire?
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. I really feel like our discussions got off track from the recommendations from staff. We've got option 1A is return to in-person meetings on August 24th and allow for council members and staff to attend electronically. Nothing saying that if the whole committee wants to meet electronically, everybody can attend by Zoom. It's simply saying that for those that are comfortable, say like the MHC, where they're looking at putting off their next meeting until we can meet in person because they're so uncomfortable, like they're just having a lot of technical issues. It gives the flexibility. So what we're really saying here is, do we want to give the flexibility to the people that are comfortable with it, or do we not? Do we want to keep the status quo? And I think the way the province has opened up to phase 3, the way we're encouraging people to support our restaurants and small businesses downtown, this is an appropriate step. It's a small step, and it gives everybody the choice to do what they're comfortable with. Now, the way I've been hearing the conversation, I thought Councillor Allen, Mayor Panko, and Councillor McKenna seemed to be in favor of that, but my connection keeps cutting out. So if something of that is changed, I'd like to hear from them, because I don't know where the consensus got skewed or where this dog breakfast got cooked out.
Okay, Mayor Panko, or Councillor Alfred, I think you had your hand up. Did you? No, Mayor Panko, sorry, and stroke you off the list.
Yeah, I think like for tonight, we need to make a decision. Do we continue electronically? That's a given. We've all agreed we need to enable that to happen. When we return, I think there's probably consensus that we're probably not even ready to return August 24th if it's going to be a hybrid model. I think there's staff need to come up with a method of enabling a hybrid model. So my suggestion tonight is that we simply permit the continuation of electronic meetings, and then staff can do some research and homework and come up with a solution and see when we could return in a hybrid model, and whether that's at August 24th or that is sometime September, and then we can face that question at that time.
Yeah, I agree. And August 24th is too early in my view, but is everybody, Councillor Alfred?
But what's the end date on that?
In my view, there is no end date. I mean, it's when it's appropriate.
I do want it to be, yeah, but I do eventually want that to end if it's 6 months, or there's no, like this is not going to continue for the next 2 years. Say the pandemic ends in September or October or January. I don't want to continue to not meet in person, or to be members to be attending electronically once we are out of the woods.
Absolutely not.
I wouldn't be in favor of that.
No. Director Costello has your hand up.
I was just wondering maybe if we kept this on committee of the whole, maybe at the last meeting of last committee meeting of every month, and at that point council can make a decision if they want to revisit it at the next committee of the whole. Just a suggestion.
That's a great idea. Councillor McKenna?
just, I think Councillor McGuire mentioned, I don't think that the technology is that difficult, even for our staff. This is everyday stuff, really. It's not complicated. And staff will be able to have a solution for us. You know, maybe it won't be the 24th, but it'll be, you know, it's not going to take months and it's not going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm sure our competent people are ready to go.
Yeah, well, we do have great staff. We know that. So I try to get to the end game here. Are we willing just to pass whatever we need to pass to continue the Zoom meetings, and then we'll look to staff to come and advise how and when protocols and everything else, how we get back together? Is that it? Can we agree on that?
Councillor Brennan, I've got a date. There's another, like maybe an appropriate committee of the whole date would be the September either 14th or 28th. And at that point, we can come forward with draft protocols and maybe we can beef up our IT from what we previously thought we'd be able to use.
Okay, everyone's good with that? Good.
That gives some comfort. Thank you.
Yeah, good. That was a good discussion. Thank you, everyone, for that. And we all have a lot of passion, and I understand that. So we'll move along. And His Worship put an item on the agenda. I'll turn to you, Mayor Panko, now to lead that discussion about the food thing.
Well, thank you. We spent about 40 minutes talking about the pandemic, which obviously is still with us. And it's Councillor Dwyer who mentioned a second wave. And I think we all fear, as much as we've been very fortunate thus far, that there is still some potentially very challenging days ahead. And we know that the measures that were put in place by public health, that really we've had great support for across the community and beyond. And we look now at the volume of cases globally. We look at what's happening across Canada. We know that as things open up, there have been additional cases in some areas, but for the most part, we've remained quite safe. But in contrast to that, we've have some ongoing dialogue, primarily on social media, of conspiracy theories to people who are denying the merits of public health and what they're doing, trying to discredit the efforts of public health to encourage us to wear a mask. And I had some concerns from different constituents in the last few days about going into places and people not wearing a mask, to discussions by our task force last week, where some of the public are still very reluctant to go into certain places because they don't feel protocols are being followed. And I think there are people out there contributing to that negative narrative who are recirculating, regurgitating some of the stories that come out of primarily the US with regards to the measures are not necessary, the pandemic isn't real, it's no more dangerous than the flu, etc. So I think it's very important. Some of these people carry a lot of influence, and when they speak, it has an impact, and it undermines the efforts that all of us and all levels of government and our public health are taking to try and make sure our citizens stay safe. We keep this at bay the best we can, and we ensure that we work through this pandemic with as little loss and infection as possible. So staff have drafted a resolution which was circulated to council earlier today, and I'm asking that council support this resolution, that we express our support for public health, our medical officer of health, and that we collectively indicate that we are not supportive of those who are trying to undermine the efforts of public health.
Thank you for that. Comments or questions from council colleagues? Councillor McKenna.
Well, as your public health board representative, I couldn't support this more, the misinformation out there. And I remember at the very start when we talked about masks, I made a comment hoping that we wouldn't politicize that issue. And some people are trying to. It has no place. This is a public health emergency, and experts are, I feel very comfortable following Dr. Stewart and other health professionals' advice. So pleased to support the resolution brought forward by Mayor Panko.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Alfred?
Yeah, I think you only have to look to the south of us to know what importance the masks have. And Canada has done relatively a successful job so far. And people in the south are looking at us going, well, it's working for them. So I am very supportive of public health. They have got us this far and they'll get us the whole way as long as we continue to support them.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Allen?
Yeah, no, I fully support this as well. My question for the mayor and others, though, was what's happening? Like, I haven't been places where people haven't been wearing their masks, but I've heard rumors that there are places that the owners aren't enforced. Whose role is it to, you know, when that happens, to do something about it?
Okay.
Oh, CEO Morris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So because it's a regulation within an act, at this point, it's the public health unit that would be responsible for enforcing it. And so we've worked in conjunction with health unit representatives to identify locations where perhaps more education is needed. And that's been the approach, is soft enforcement through education. And that's what we're focusing on right now. We do have, I should say, we do have our bylaw officers, and of course our police are enforcing in the public and in open areas, parks and other public areas. But we haven't seen a lot of direct enforcement inside places of business. But based on the feedback we've received, it's clear we need some more education in certain areas.
Thanks for that. Mayor Panko, did you have something else to add? Or?
Well, I mean, we see really good compliance. I mean, for the most part, you go into any retail store, any restaurant, and for the most part, staff in those locations and people going in, citizens going in, consumers going in, are following the guidelines. But it's the efforts of the few who are continuing to deny the recommendations of public health, which are creating that uncertainty that, well, maybe public health doesn't know what they're talking about, and maybe there is more about this, and maybe it is a matter of government control, and all this narrative that we see when people are not exercising physical distancing and are not wearing a mask. They're creating risk, which will potentially lead to the loss of lives of our citizens. And so again, it just goes back to the need for us to express our support and continue to do so. And we're not through this yet.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think everyone's in support of that. And, just going back to our discussion a few minutes ago, this reinforces our council's commitment to make sure we keep the pedal to the metal. Things are going really good, but we can't let our foot off the pedal. So thanks for bringing that forward, and that will come up at our council meeting for adoption. I think everyone's going to support that. So thank you for that. And I think that's all we have. I got the wrong thing up. I guess I'll just call for a yes. Thank you, Clark.
I just wanted to, sorry about that. I just wanted to clarify the action item from the first item with respecting e-participation meetings.
Okay.
You'll notice on your expanded agenda, there was 2 bylaws to come out of that. However, Director Costello and I've consulted him with the recommendation by council. We're going to put it all in one bylaw. So that'll come under item 7.1, and there'll be no need to bring forward item 7.2 as it'll be combined into one bylaw.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep, so that will conclude our special committee of the whole. I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Dwyer. All in favor? So we'll have like a 1 minute break.
Probably 2 or 3 if they do redraft that the bylaw.
Okay, we'll give them 3 minutes so we can have a bathroom break. Okay, that's with that.
Welcome to this special meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, August 10th. We have all members of council and a number of staff in attendance this evening. An announcement tonight, word came out over the weekend, the death of former MPP Doug Wiseman. And Mr. Wiseman passed away on August 1st. And in Perth in his 91st year. He was a beloved husband of Bernice, who was formerly Drummond for over 69 years, and will be dearly missed by his children, Clifford, and his wife Marlene, Karen, her husband Tom Dunn, Robert, and his wife Julie Dixon. MPP Wiseman served from 1971. He was elected to the Ontario Legislature, getting an easy victory in Eastern Ontario constituency of Lanark, as the riding was at the time. He returned in 1975 and was parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Health at that time. Appointed Minister of the Portfolio at the Bill Davis government in 1978. Minister of Government Services in 1979. He served until 1990, I believe it was. Yes, and as a progressive conservative and through numerous governments. So those of us who grew up in the area certainly were very familiar with our MPP, and he leaves quite a legacy of service to our community. And Councillor Brennan, I think you knew MPP Wiseman quite well.
Yeah, I grew up with Doug and my colleague Councillor McGuire. I'm sure knew him well too, and cut my teeth politically with Mr. Wiseman, and I can safely say he's one of my mentors, and taught me a lot about what it means to be an MPP, and he set the bar with him and among others. My other boss is taught me a lot too, but Doug was a constituency man, and that he stayed in touch with his municipalities and never ever wavered to get help to the towns and communities that he serves. So a great man, and Bunny is a great lady too, and all my thoughts are with them. So
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll ask for disclosure of monetary interest. I hear none. We have no delegations. We have no adoption of minutes. Reports. Anyone have any reports this evening? I don't see any hands going up. I just have a couple myself. Just want to mention, attended the grand opening of the Global Culture Trading Post on July 31st, and it was nice, very nice to see. I think it was the first business ribbon cutting I've had during the pandemic, and it just demonstrates the, I guess, the courage and forward-looking view of the owners taking that risk of opening during a pandemic. A great store, a great variety, and I think it's a type of retail operation which will really draw people, not just from Smith Falls, but from all over. So we wish Derek and Violet all the best as they venture forward with that new enterprise. And last Friday, August 7th, the Economic Recovery Task Force met again, just to give you a bit of an update on where we're at with that. We discussed a future role for the task force. There's a consensus that we continue to meet, maybe not weekly, but for the time being, probably 2 times a month, unless things change, and we could meet more frequently if necessary. And this may lead to sector-focused breakout groups. One thing that's become very obvious through this is certainly some sectors have been more deeply impacted in a negative way than others, and a lot of commonality among sectors which need to adapt to this changed world. So we'll be working on that along with our Manager of Economic Development, Jennifer Miller, as we move forward. We also intend to go back and survey our business community to assess the impact from the pandemic and to gather feedback on other models that maybe we can use for assistance. So there is a survey went out in the early stages of the pandemic. We think it's important that we sort of take the time to understand where things are at today, see how businesses have managed to get to this point, what the worries and concerns are right now as we deal with the possibility of a second wave. We discussed the risk of a second wave, of course, We talked about extending patio season and certainly seemed consensus that most of those restaurants with patios today would like the opportunity to continue as far into the fall as possible. So as tough, resilient Canadians, I'm sure we look forward to dining outside even when the weather gets a little bit cooler. And we also talked about a model that North Grenville has used to support small businesses. And they had worked with their CFTC to provide, they set aside $100,000 with grants of up to $1,000 or $1,000 for up to 200 businesses. And I think they've had about 50 who've taken advantage of that. So we had some discussion on that, and that's something that may come back in the future to council for consideration if we're looking to provide further support for business community. So that's it for my reports. We have a very important bylaw, which is with Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Alfred that a bylaw to amend procedural bylaw 7852-2004 be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by
Alfred.
Sorry, Alfred. That a bylaw to amend procedural bylaw 7852-2004 be received, read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Discussion, Councillor McKenna?
Yes, we just, in the special meeting that took place prior to this, we discussed the ability to continue to hold virtual meetings during this pandemic. And we'll take a further look at that in the near future. But now it's prudent for council to have that option still available to us.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Yes, that a bylaw to amend procedural bylaw 7852-2004 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10169-2020.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Alford, that a bylaw to amend procedural bylaw 7852-2004 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10169-2020. All in favor? That's carried. That enables us to continue on and do business. Okay, that's it for our bylaws. We have one miscellaneous motion, which is with Councillor Alford, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Allen. Whereas, I got the long one tonight. Whereas Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls recognizes that adhering to public health guidelines is critical to containing and defeating community transmission of the COVID-19 virus in our region. And whereas circulating and promoting information indicating otherwise is irresponsible and could endanger the health and well-being of the people of Smith Falls. And whereas the Town of Smith Falls supports Dr. Paula Stewart, Medical Officer of Health, and the staff of the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit in their continuous efforts since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, and condemns any false narratives and actions designed to destroy confidence in the medical community, resulting in an increase in the risk of exposure, spread, and potentially devastating impacts of COVID-19. And whereas the Town of Smith Falls thanks our dedicated health unit staff for their crucial and tireless efforts in keeping our communities safe, healthy, and educated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Sean Panko and the members of council encourage all residents to continue to work together and adhere to public health guidelines, including the wearing of face coverings, adhering to proper physical distancing and thorough hand hygiene throughout the current COVID-19 recovery phase and beyond for their own safety and well-being, and to minimize the risk of the virus spreading in our communities. And further, that a copy of this resolution be distributed to all municipalities within the provincial riding of Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston for endorsement. And further, that a copy be sent to the Lanark Leeds Grenville District Health Unit Board and our local MPP.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Alford.
I think it's fairly self-explanatory, and this has the unanimous support by council. The health unit has provided us with some level of comfort here that other communities haven't had. So I think the town generally is quite comfortable in following and continuing to follow the direction of our public health people.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor Allen, whereas the Council of the Corporation of Town of Smith Falls recognizes that adhering to public health guidelines is critical to containing and defeating community transmission of the COVID-19 virus in our region. And whereas circulating and promoting information indicating otherwise is irresponsible and could endanger the health and well-being of the people of Smith Falls. And whereas the Town of Smith Falls supports Dr. Paula Stewart, Medical Officer of Health, and the staff of the Leeds, Grenville, and Lanark District Health Unit in their continuous efforts since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and condemns any false narratives and actions designed to destroy confidence in the medical community, resulting in an increase in the risk of exposure, spread, and potentially devastating impacts of COVID-19. And whereas the Town of Smith Falls thanks our dedicated health unit staff for their crucial and tireless efforts in keeping our community safe, healthy, and educated. Now therefore be resolved, the Mayor Sean Panko and the members of council all encourage all residents to continue to work together and adhere to public health guidelines, including the wearing of face coverings, adhering to proper physical distancing, and thorough hand hygiene throughout the current COVID-19 recovery phase and beyond for their own safety and well-being, and to minimize the risk of virus spreading in our communities. And further, that a copy of this resolution be distributed to all municipalities within the provincial riding of Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston for endorsement, and further, that a copy be sent to the Lanark, Leeds, Grenville District Health Unit and our local MPP. All in favor? That's carried. Any inquiries or announcements? Yes, Councillor Alford.
Well, Councillor Brennan's been pressuring me to come up with something for our trivia, our ongoing contest to see who can guess. So, what woman's nickname was the grandmother of recycling here in Smith Falls?
Councillor Allen, quick with a hand. Councillor McKenna.
Elva Corliss.
It is. Elva was also known as Ma to her co-workers at OK Economy. Elva was one of the founding members of REAL in 1989. She played a key role in the early years of the Pitch-In program, the Waste Reduction Week, and Environment on Display. She was instrumental in Smith Falls' first recycling project in 1979. She recruited volunteers and a truck, and one Sunday a month, she took recyclables to an Ottawa city yard. Smith Falls introduced its own Blue Box program in the early 90s. Elva was also a key organizer of the area's first reuse center, which later spun off and is now the current REAL store. Elva served as a director with REAL from 1990 to 2010, including being the president from 97 to 2000. She served on the committee for a waste management master plan study for Smith Falls and the county in the early 90s, the Recycling Council of Ontario, the county's Environmental Action Network. Elva was Smith Falls Citizen of the Year in 1991 and received Canada's 125 medal in 1993. Smith Falls was her hometown, and in 2010, Elva moved to Angus to be closer to her children and grandchildren and passed away at 86 in 2015. That's Elva Corliss.
Thank you very much.
A woman to be admired, and she and Peter Rao and some of her compatriots were completely responsible for getting us this far, for getting it even started. So there you go, Jay.
Good one. Excellent. Good job.
Thank you. A great groundbreaker and
who's next?
A lasting legacy.
Who's next?
Yeah, I'm going to challenge. It's my turn to challenge. I'm going to challenge Councillor Dwyer. It's harder for them because they're not as mature as the rest.
That'd be a good one.
Oh,
but,
I will have you know, a master's in heritage has taught me just a little bit.
But
I will accept your challenge and come back with a thoroughly researched question.
And it's going to be Councillor McGuire's best hope to get one of these, because somebody younger will be asking a question.
I'm 0 so far, so.
Okay. We look forward to it. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Brennan, you have the motion for adjournment, so we can move back into committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 6:16 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Dwyer. This council adjourns proceedings at 6:16 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? And I guess we have a 2-minute recess, Jay. Is that be enough? Would that be enough?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, everyone's
Everyone's
ready.
okay
Let's
with that?
carry on.
Okay. Okay. So we're in our regular committee of the whole meeting, and welcome to everyone. We already did a roll call, and I assume everyone's still here, so I'll forego that. Are there any amendments to the agenda as presented? Councilor McGuire.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. With the consensus of council, I'd like to take item 8E off tonight just because of the connection and quality issues I'm having.
Okay, that could be revisited at a later date. So we'll take that off. Any other amendments? Any disclosure of monetary interest arising from the agenda tonight? Seeing none. So we have no delegations. We have adoption of minutes for Monday, July 6th, 2020, special committee of the whole meeting, and Monday, July 27th, 2020, committee of the whole meeting. Any movers for that? Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Alford. All in favor? So I understand we have a few directors' reports tonight, and I'll leave it to C.L. Morris to lead that discussion. So over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start with our Deputy Clerk, Nadine Bennett. She's filling in this evening for Chief Cheeseborough, who's away, and she'll provide an update on our most recent emergency control group meeting.
Good evening. So just to update everybody, at our last meeting, it was last Thursday, the chief reviewed some of the numbers, and we were happy to hear from the health unit that there has been no new active cases in our region. So that was as of July 11th, and I checked their website just before the meeting, and there's nothing denoted there as well. So that's great news. There's also been no cases in long-term care since late June, and the health unit advised that they're working on a response team that's preparing for return to school in September. The other item that was mentioned at our emergency meeting is that the biggest risk right now for COVID-19 is continues to be our proximity to Ottawa, as there's many cases there, and that many people work and travel to Ottawa. And so there is a concern for that. But again, if we practice our safe measures, hopefully we can maintain the status quo with respect to cases. The state of emergency was reviewed at our meeting and is going to remain in place. The group discussed keeping it in place through to the school reopenings and reevaluate at that time. And our control group has decided to go to bi-weekly meetings. If there was a need to meet on an emergency basis, obviously we prepare for that, and that meeting would be called and we'd meet. But right now we're going to continue with a bi-weekly meeting on Thursday. And just a note that enforcement is still being continued. Bylaw is available on weekends, and they're going around doing pandemic enforcement. And they continue to focus on education as well. But there hasn't been any major issues there. So that's basically it. We'll keep you up to date. And again, the next meeting won't be this Thursday, but it'll be the following Thursday. That's everything.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Any questions from council? Nope. Seeing none, thank you to the Emergency Control Group for keeping us informed. And I think everyone would concur that with school starting, it's prudent to keep our eye on things, and we'll see how it goes there. So thanks for that. Okay, next one.
Yeah, so our second verbal report is from Director Manhire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick updates. The Pickled Pig will be operating out of the Murphy Park building and will continue to do music and patio every Friday night in August for the first 2 Fridays and the first 2 Fridays in September. So that's the 17th, 14th, 21st, and 28th, and then the 4th and 11th of September. from 2 o'clock until in the afternoon until 11 p.m. Heritage House Museum, along with the Railway Museum of Eastern Ontario, will be delivering movies under the stars every Thursday in August. They had their first last week, and they will continue through the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th from 7:30 in the evening until 11 p.m. At the community center, camps have started last week, and the plan for reopening has been finalized. ICE users are getting in touch with our Parks and Recreation Department for booking space for the fall, and camps will continue until the beginning of school. We still have some daycare space available, and we are working on plans for the school year, and we'll confirm space availability once we have the regulations from the province written out. We continue to work with public health around our protocols and our setup for the daycare. Anyone needing care should be in touch with the CDC as soon as possible so that we can determine need and space. Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor Alford had her hand up, and then Mayor Panko.
I do. Director Manhire, with regard to when the children go back to school, will we be able to offer before and after care? I think that was one of the, in daycare for those children whose parents can't have to deliver them early or pick them up late. Is that a service we had before?
We do have before and after care. Our biggest challenge is going to be the structure for school and how much space they actually need. Because if they need the space, we won't have it. We're also currently working around what the implications are for cohorts within the school. So that's something that we're working very closely with the school board and public health on how we address those issues. But we will have before and after care as well as the daycare.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Mayor Panko, you had your hand up. You're muted. Mute.
Thank you. On the summer camps, Director Manhire just wanted to express, I guess, gratitude. One of my kids is in one of the athletic camps last week, and 2 were in there this week. And it was a great experience, real safety protocols in place. And I know the organizer was very grateful for the town staff who helped ensure that the environment could be suitable and safe and meaningful. And so I know it was a great experience for all the kids involved. And I think that's continuing on for the next 3 weeks as well. So it's just encouraging to know that in these challenging times that safety measures can come into play that can make sure our kids are safe, but they can still get some great athletic opportunities and instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for that. Any other questions for Director Manhire? Councillor McGuire?
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. To follow up on Councillor Alford's comments on before after school, are all of our staff back to work now, or what's the updated plan on getting people back if they're not already?
Mr. Chair, it's a good question. We're still working on that registration piece. Our ratios right now are a little bit more intensive than they usually are in order to cover off some of those protocols. So we're working with some of our staff have some challenges in coming back. Most are eager to do so, and we're going to bring them back as we have that demand filled. But they are not currently all back. We do anticipate that they will be in the next couple of weeks.
Excellent. And do we know roughly how many are we like a ballpark of how many are left to come back?
I believe there's only 3 left to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? No, thank you, Director Manhire, for that report. Next up, CEO Morris.
So, thank you again. So the last one I will provide. So last Wednesday, the Federal Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, the Honorable Catherine McKenna, made an announcement on pandemic-related infrastructure funding. So essentially, the announcement took the ICIP, the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, which is a $33 billion, billion with a B, program spread over 12 years, and earmarked 10% of that pot of money towards what they're branding as COVID-19 resilience stream. So they provided some broad definitions of what that means. It could be anywhere from infrastructure improvements to facility improvements to even as far as active transportation investments as well. So it's a pretty broad swath. The announcement, as you can imagine, is fairly high level. At this point, so that's 3.3 billion across the country. Ontario's portion of that will be almost 1.2 billion, so it's a significant amount of money. And so at this point, we're waiting for the provincial Ministry of Infrastructure to identify what the application process will be and what it will apply towards and so on. So you'll remember the ICIP program is a partnership between 3 levels of government where each one contributes. So municipalities, for those programs, they're eligible to apply for. We apply to the province, and then they nominate to the federal government. So the program, in terms of changes, it really boils down to 2 things. The feds have committed up to 80% to cover up to 80% of a program cost. That's up from about 40%. So that's a significant increase. And it promises to come with faster approvals. So that's kind of the broad level announcement. We are going to be talking about this as a management team next week, and we'll bring back more details once we find out from the provincial government what they're looking for in terms of an application process. But certainly a good announcement, and I think the fact that it's going to be fast-tracked will be helpful for those that have projects ready and in the queue and ready to go. So we're just deciding, or at least discussing, what projects might fall into that category. But once we overlay the provincial requirements, we'll bring that back to you and have a discussion.
Thanks for that, Councilor Maguire.
Thanks, CEO Morris. It was great to get that email from AMO last week that had it. And I just wanted to note too that under the eligible projects, you've got active transportation, including bike lanes, specifically mentioned in the press release. So, maybe there's an opportunity for Beckwith and our broader network in town coming forward with this $1.1 billion program. So thank you, CEO Morris.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Yeah, that's great news. And, just saying, could be good news for Confederation Bridge, but anyway. Any other reports, CEO Morris?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And that's it for tonight for the reports. We have a correspondence item, and it's a letter from Melanie Spenceley from the Nurse Practitioner Clinic in Smith Falls, and it's got to do with an appointment to their board of directors. I'm going to propose to committee that we put this on the agenda for a priority issue, because there is a request for a member of council to sit on that committee. So with everyone's concurrence, we'll put that on as item F, and we can have a discussion about that request at that time. Is that okay with everybody? Yes, good. We have no in-camera items, and we have a few priority issues. And the first one is the new hangar lease agreement, site BW19, Smith Falls Montague Airport 2020-96. And CEO Morris is going to present on behalf of Director Dunlap tonight. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Dunlap is away, so I'm pinch hitting tonight. So the report in front of you is the recommendation is to enter a lease agreement. One of the hangars known as BW19 at the Russ Beach Airport was sold. There was an existing lease agreement in place. It was started in 2016. So the hangar has been sold. A new group has come in and wished to enter a lease agreement. So at this point, the Smith Falls Flying Club, as our representative at the airport, have brought the agreement forward. They've signed it off, and now at this point, it's going to both town and township council for endorsement. So the terms of the agreement are exactly the same as the previous one. One might ask, are there successor rights in these contracts? And I've reviewed both the existing agreement and the proposed one, and they do not contain successor rights. So in effect, this would be a new lease, not an extension of the previous lease that was in place. Staff felt it was important to bring it to your attention because it's not a new hangar, it's not a new build. The hangar exists, it's simply a new ownership group for that hangar. So perhaps I'll pause there and be happy to answer any questions.
Yep, Councillor Alford.
Thank you, CEO Morse. I'm about, I don't even know if it's quite a month that council let a new build, new hangar lease go through, and followed that with a resolution that quite clearly states that Smith Falls Council will not approve any further hangar lease agreements and removes the delegated authority of the mayor and clerk to authorize transfer lease agreements until the 1992 lease agreement lease agreements is updated and approved by bylaw, and that has not happened. So I can appreciate and have some empathy for the purchasers of this new hangar, but it seems to me that we've already charted the course for how this will go. We remove delegated authority, and we won't sign any new ones. And this would be a new one. If there's no successor rights, then this starts and would end in 2041. And the price of $100 would still be as it is in the old agreement with the Smith Falls Flying Club. So I'm not in any way going to support us approving this one when we already have a resolution on the books that says we will not until the 92 agreement is done.
Thanks for that. Councillor McKenna.
Do we, members of the, I guess, the Airport Commission on council or staff, can you give us an update on where those negotiations are? Is there some way we can expedite that agreement and get it back to us so that we don't? I agree with Councillor Alford. These are people that are trying to just move ahead, and I agree that council does not want to extend any further contracts. But is there some way we can are we moving as fast as we can in this COVID to get this agreement in place?
CEO Morris, can you enlighten us?
Yes, thank you. So the request on behalf of the commission has gone out to the Flying Club for several pieces of information, financial data, all in alignment with the operating agreement that the commission has, actually that the municipalities have with the Flying Club. So that's underway. We have received an initial response to the request, and it will be discussed at the next meeting of the commission, and it's scheduled for Tuesday, August 18th. So it is moving, and I think the commission will have some decisions to make in terms of accepting the information and potentially seeking more information. But I can confidently say it's underway.
More questions? Anybody has a question? I think that my question would be, they've requested on July 20th. What's the implication of just saying we're going to have to wait on this because we're not ready to approve it at this time? CEO Mars.
Yeah, I think as the owner of the asset, that's your decision. Clearly, I'm not sure if this has gone to Montague Council yet. I know they took the month of July. They didn't meet in the month of July, so I take it probably hasn't.
No.
I can confirm that. But yeah, I think the date on the draft lease is August 3rd, but clearly if the licensor, the town and township don't sign off on it, then that's your prerogative. What does that mean for the space? Well, I think it would be problematic to have a tenant in that facility without all the controls that are in place within the lease agreement, particularly insurance. So we would have to work with the Flying Club to make arrangements for the space not to be occupied.
Yeah, it's the difference between this one and the one we did, whatever it was, a month or so ago. The one we did before was a proposal that was submitted, I think, in January, and things went off the rails with COVID, and so it didn't come forward until a later date. And then in between that time, the commission has asked all these questions of the Flying Club, so we want to look at things. This one here is a little more problematic for me. You know, I'd rather get some traction on talking to the Flying Club and getting more information and that sort of thing before. I mean, the agreement is from 1992 and it's clearly outdated. So I don't think I can support it. Mayor Penko? You're muted.
Thanks again, Jay.
No problem.
It's a challenge. It's a bit of a quandary because this group has purchased a hangar that they cannot occupy and utilize until both we and Montague have signed off on the lease. I mean, I would be prepared to, if it's possible, that we would accept a month-to-month lease at this stage. Now, the lease agreement is issued by the Flying Club, between the Flying Club and the owners. I don't believe we were drafted the original leases. So we would be, I think the request, we go back to the Flying Club with a suggestion that we would approve the lease on a month-to-month basis as we review the existing agreements and before the final decisions are made.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Alford.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that we are privy to, if you are selling something on leased land and you haven't got the lease, and yet can the purchase move forward until the lease? Like, I don't know what the arrangements are between the former owner and the new owners, but I would assume in any other kind of land deal like this on leased land that the purchase wouldn't be finalized until you got the permission for the lease or you got the lease signed. That's what I don't know what happened, but that would be how I think it should have worked or could work. And again, I do have empathy for the new purchasers, but we received this on August the 3rd, and it was July the 20th that we made that resolution. So there was, I don't know what the discussions were around the purchase, but the Smiths Falls Flying Club, I'm assuming, knew that we passed this resolution before they sent this lease to us.
Thanks for that. Yeah, C.O. Morris.
2 points of clarification. The signatories to the lease agreement are the town and township and the lessees. So the Flying Clubs are not signatories to the lease. They manage it on behalf of the municipalities. And just another point of clarification, the council passed the resolution on July 6th.
Okay, Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of modifying and coming up with a one-off deal. The council made its decision July 6th not to renew leases till we had a new agreement. And I think we're just opening up. I don't know how many others are in the queue, and we set a precedent, and everybody will be coming forward looking for a one-by-month. So I'm stick to it. I'm confident that we'll reach a new agreement as quickly as possible, and that we'll be able to push this through shortly thereafter.
Thanks for that. Anybody else? We need to, figure out what we want to do here. And I think Mayor Panko made a good suggestion. I mean, this agreement here was from 1992, and it's going to be a little bit of stick handling to get it updated. And so it's not to say, I mean, they bought this lease and that they need a lease for it, or they bought the hangar and they need a lease for it, and they need to, participate in the flying club and that sort of thing. So, I don't think, let me put it this way, a 40-year lease agreement is not on the table. We should put, a 6-month on or whatever, because it's going to take a little bit of doing to get this sorted out. And that doesn't mean that we don't want them at the airport, but I think there's got to be some wiggle room here. Councillor Alford.
I don't know the number that are in the queue, but if we change the resolution or abandon the resolution as we wrote it, because if I remember the discussion at the time is that we would let that particular new lease for Mr. Penna go through, but that was going to be it until we had, and I think that was a fairly unanimous vote at the time that we would do that. And there are others in the queue. How many, I'm not sure. Maybe CEO Morris knows, but if we make an exception here, are we going to do it again 5 times, 10 times? Because that's what's going to happen.
Okay, Mayor Panko.
To CA Morris or other staff who may have seen the lease, I mean, we received it July 20th. What date was it signed?
I have it in front of me. It's dated August 3rd.
It says
there are no dates on the signature blocks, but the date on the agreement is August 3rd. So presumably it was signed around that time.
well, I'm still of the feeling. I mean, this may take a long time, certainly months minimum, before we likely come up with a new agreement with the flying club. And I understand the need to draw a line here, but at the same time, I think we have people who probably have airplanes looking for a place to put them. And if we go on a month-to-month basis, I don't see any real risk. I think we can still, as reviewed and approved on a monthly basis. It gives us an opportunity to make a change to the long-term lease when we come through, when we finalize that agreement with the Flying Club. If we thought we were close to an agreement right now, I'd be fine holding the line. We haven't even entered discussions, and we're still waiting for more information from the Flying Club. So it's going to be a very slow process.
Thanks for that, Councillor Alford.
Just one more comment in that to hold off and make sure that all the parties, the Smiths Falls Flying Club and the 2 municipalities, get to the table and get this hammered out faster. Don't take away their. I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to take away the urgency for getting this thing done. And we do that when we make exceptions.
Thanks for that. Any other comments? I'm of the mayor's mind, and not to hold a hammer, but to try to, stick handle it and make sure everyone is satisfied. And it's not like we're not going to be changing things around, because I think we are. But it's going to take some time and some diplomacy and stick-to-itiveness. I think we can do that. And in the meantime, like the mayor said, people have planes and they need a place to put them. So I have got no problem with going month to month. Councillor Allen?
I agree.
Okay. Councillor McGuire?
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. We passed this on July 6th, the resolution, and I think the resolution is clearly worded, and we haven't gotten any dialogue since then regarding it. So now it sounds like it's been over a month and there's been no real progress on the part of the Flying Club. So I tend to agree with Councillor Alfred that that making the exceptions is just going to allow this to drag on much longer than it needs to.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? We need to, Councillor McKenna or Councillor Dwyer, any thoughts? Yeah, Councillor McKenna.
Well, I think there's three of us that have clearly said we stick with the resolution we passed
Yeah, okay.
July 6th. And there's three that have not, and leave it at that.
Well,
So
Councillor
that
Dwyer.
leaves me. Oh,
That's what you signed up for.
yeah, really. Right? I think the debate that we conducted earlier this year made our expectations terribly clear. And I think it's time that the Flying Club comes to the table. And thus I agree to hold the line based on the decision that we previously made.
Okay. So I've heard from everyone, and it's, you know, there's a majority here that are not in favor of renewing this. So unless there's anything anybody's going to change, I expect this will come to council next week, if I'm not incorrect. Councillor McKenna?
If there's new information that comes forward in the meantime, I'd be, you know, if there's some information that we're not aware of, please bring it back in the near future. I'm all ears, but based on the information I have to make that decision.
Okay, thanks for that. So I'll leave that discussion now, and it will be coming back, and unless there's any new information, we'll probably have to deal with it at Councillor Alfred.
Sorry, just a question. So in terms of process, so this has to come forward to council to say we're not going to do anything?
That's a question for the clerk.
Like that doesn't seem like our process.
Sorry, Jay, I'm just turning on my
Okay.
camera here.
I'm right here, Jay.
Director Costello.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brennan. So if this comes to the council table and comes forward as a bylaw to authorize execution of the agreement, and it could potentially be lost by the sounds of it. If it's lost, it can't be reconsidered by council for a year until 2/3 majority bring it forward again. So if it's sitting at a 4-3 split right now, and that would be lost, that is what would happen.
And if it doesn't come to council, we can leave it till further information comes forward, i.e. an agreement with the.
Correct.
Okay, well, that would probably be the way to go. Councillor Alfred, did you have something?
Yeah, no, just committee is not sending it to council.
No. Councillor Dwyer?
Thanks. For a point of clarification, maybe Director Costello or CAO Morris could advise if it's wise for us to pass a resolution instead of a bylaw, clearly articulating that we are looking for new information, and if there is specific components of new information that we are looking for, perhaps we could recognize that in a formal motion.
CAO Morris?
Yeah, so at this point, essentially committee has decided not to take action on entering lease. So nothing changes. So we can communicate that to the Flying Club. And if we get additional information that might add to this conversation, we'll bring it back to committee at the appropriate time. Otherwise, it'll sit dormant until a new agreement is executed with the Flying Club.
Okay.
So from a staff point of view, we're comfortable proceeding on that basis.
Okay. Everyone's good with that? Okay. So we'll leave that item. Item B is lifting of park lot control, Plan 27M 83, blocks 4 and 5 with our friend Planner Grenke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I think this will be pretty brief. This is a process that we've all seen before a couple of times, and this one is essentially the same as what we have before. But in this case, I'm recommending that council passes a bylaw to lift the part law control provisions of the Planning Act to divide 2 of the blocks as part of the Bellamy Farm subdivision into individual lots along the party walls to create 8 separate townhouse lots that would each be sold. So under the Planning Act, these actions do need to be passed by bylaw. So if council agrees, then we'd recommend a bylaw be placed on the next agenda. Any questions from council?
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Everyone's given a thumbs up. Questions, Councillor Dwyer and Councillor McKenna, sorry.
Thank you. Are we any further to modifying our delegation of authority bylaws so that these matters can go straight to council without the need for debate or discussion or a report?
I'll let Director Costello respond to that.
We sure are, and happy to say that it'll be coming forward at the same time as the procedural bylaw, which will be coming forward as soon as Deputy Clerk Bennett and I are done our training session with eScribe. So it's going to come together at the same time.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna had, yeah.
Just perhaps, I know there's no such thing as a dumb question, but I do have one. On Appendix A and Appendix B, in Appendix A, the block looks like it's on the southwest side of the street. And then Appendix B, it's on the opposite side of the street. Is it just that Appendix B is turned around? The arrow's pointing to one side of the street, but when I look at Appendix B, it's on the opposite side of the street. So maybe that just schematic is just turned.
Yes, I believe that's the case. That's just the way the survey was placed onto the document.
Okay.
So I can zoom it out as much, but block 1 is the larger block intended for an apartment building behind 4 and 5 there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So nodding heads and thumbs up all around. Good. So that will come forward, I assume, at our next council meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So you're still up, Carl. Bellamy Farm Townhouse Site Plan Blocks 3, 12, and 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make this one pretty quick as well, since these are also this is also a process that we've been through a few times. At this point, Parkview Homes is ready to apply for building permits for 3 more townhouse blocks on the subdivision there. So one 4-story, or sorry, one 1-story 4-unit block, a 2-story 4-unit block, and a 2-story 5-unit block. So the site plan that's before council has been reviewed by colleagues and other departments. A few minor modifications have been made, but substantially this is in largely the same sort of form that we've been seeing before with some of the other townhouses that have also crossed council's plate over the last year. So it's the staff recommendation that we pass a bylaw to authorize these future site plan agreements at the next available opportunity.
Okay. Questions, comments? Councillor Allen?
Yes, just one quick question, Carl. Where the last block is that the end of the Parkview property, or is there another section going to be filled in?
Through the chair, there is one more townhouse block that is currently not accounted for. We don't have an application for that. There is also a block that's part of phase one that's intended for multi-residential, so apartment building construction at some point. That has been sold by Parkview, but we don't have a site plan application there. And to the south of that is the future phase of the Bellamy Farm subdivision, and we're expecting to bring that. We're expecting to have a public meeting on that one fairly shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? And that will come forward at the next council meeting, I assume, and everyone's okay with that. We have lots of funds up, nodding heads and everything, so that's good. Thank you, Carl. Thanks very much. More good news. I'll continue on. We have deferred the presentation of the police annual budget to another meeting. And so I'll just skip that one. And we have Rideau Community Health Services Municipal Grant with His Worship.
Yes, thank you. I think it's been a month ago now, 3 weeks ago, when this question first came forward. And just as a bit of a refresher, during the pandemic, we had like 4 different local faith-based organizations providing community lunches, takeaway lunches, delivered lunches, including St. John Anglican, which was providing 3 days a week. And St. John had made a decision they were going to suspend their program. They looked at the uptake was much greater than anticipated. They didn't believe that all of the people utilizing lunches were doing so as a result of the COVID, which was the motivator for them to start doing the lunches. So Rideau Community Health Services had offered to fill the gap and try to provide for those 3 days that the people who were reliant on those lunches were not going to get those lunches for the foreseeable future. So there's a number of questions I think that council had when our committee had when we discussed this a few weeks ago. And so since that time, like I said, I've received some answers, and I know Councillor McKenna also reached out to get some questions answered. He may have something to add as well. But essentially, every dollar of the 24,000, if it's granted, would be utilized for food. There is no administrative charge. There is no deduction. It will pay directly for the meals. And Rideau Community Health Services had initially intended, I think, to prepare the lunches at near their site or on their site. I think since then it's evolved, and they were, I think, working with a local service organization, not-for-profit charity, and utilizing their volunteers and a healthy and approved kitchen to prepare the lunches. So it will provide a degree of support, I guess, for that organization as well. Also asked for me to check with the other members of the food security group to see if there was any opposition to this action. And there were some questions by some of them, but I think the key thing was understanding that every dollar we grant goes directly to the preparation of the meals, which goes directly to the individuals in need, satisfy the questions of anybody within that group. So the money was initially intended to pay for rent for the neighborhood concept. And as much as that is still very much alive, it's certainly not going to happen in 2020. There's a strong recognition that that'll provide a lot of merit and benefit to our community. But as long as physical gathering is challenged, as long as we're in a pandemic, it may be difficult to bring that together. So from a priority standpoint, the consensus was need is there to provide food support today. And I ask council's support for that.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor McKenna and then Councillor McGuire.
I certainly wanted more information, and thank you, Your Worship, for for helping get that. I do support this transfer of the funds. We've already allocated to this organization to be used to be repurposed from rent to food. I think the figure I saw initially was if this was when we first got the numbers from them, it was before people could come together in groups larger than, very small numbers. So the service clubs weren't able to help. And that was the meal at that time. And 100% of the cost, you're right, was going to food. And it was $5.50 a meal. And I think when the service clubs are now able to participate, and I don't want to name them, but they're wonderful people. And I think they've gotten it down to less than $4 a meal. So it's very, very good value. The money is going 100% to feed people. So I do support the mayor's recommendation tonight.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor McGuire, you're next, I think.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. I'm wondering if any of the money is going to be going towards staff time at Rideau Community Health Services.
No, 100% of it will be going to food, meal preparation.
So it's 100% grocery bills are the only thing that's reimbursable.
What it will likely be is, as Councillor McKenna indicated, I think it's about $3.50 a lunch will be paid to the service club organization for preparation of the lunches.
Okay, so it's simply that they're going to offer their space up and they're going to redistribute the grant to the community service groups that are going to prepare the food and
it's a matter of coordinating volunteers, a matter of doing deliveries as well. So they're simply partnering to make sure this can happen.
Okay, and do we know that if any of the members of the food security working group need a top up from the previous grant that we've allocated them?
We haven't heard anything yet. They also received provincial money via the county and Food Banks Canada. So I think for now, they've been managing fine. But Reverend Ryan, who's been away on holidays, he's back recently, is someone who would probably is a gatekeeper of that. So I will check in with him and get some information back to council in the next week or so.
Okay, I don't know, without the food security giving us their ask and without, a big part of my understanding talking to the group at St. John's that was doing the meals 3 days a week is that they didn't, it was kind of the reaction to the crisis, but it wasn't necessarily the long-term solution to the food security problem. And knowing that it sounds like that the demand of the food bank isn't as high as it normally would be this time of year, that we're just shifting the services around. And I'm still on the fence on this one of whether or not it's a needed service or it's going to really fill a gap, I guess. So anyway, Councillor Alford, or whoever's next.
Councillor Alford.
Thank you. I am supportive of food security. I think we all are. There's one player in this that I did some little investigatory work myself in. Community Home Support Lanark County is funded by the Southeast LHIN. And they, during the pandemic, they're the Meals on Wheels people. They have another bunch of services, foot care and all those things. But I asked for their statistics on the Meals on Wheels, which can be subsidized. And there's a commercial kitchen. They're fairly experienced at this kind of stuff. And so I asked for some of the, because they serve Smith Falls, Perth, and Carleton Place. The congregate dining wasn't able to happen during COVID. They do assisted transportation, which that was able to continue. The home help didn't continue. Respite didn't continue for all the reasons that COVID posed, all the challenges COVID posed. The one that was surprising to me is, and I know I spoke with the mayor about this early on, and you had thought that Community Home Support was no longer present in Smith Falls. In fact, it is. And the Meals on Wheels, there were, each meal is called a unit. And so in Smith Falls, their units for 2019-2020, so June to June, were 8,209 units. That's Meals on Wheels. But in Perth, we have twice, and again, the population of Perth, they served 18,646 meals in Perth. Now, I know that some of their grants and donations, the public supports some service clubs for, so all those meals can be subsidized. It depends on people's ability to pay. I do know that from looking at their website, and I've asked Marianne Nicholson, their ED, to see if she can shed some light on why Perth is so much higher than Smith Falls. I do know that they only serve frozen meals in Smith Falls. Well, they have both hot and frozen in Perth. But again, it begs the question as to, in terms of food security, or who we could assist in making sure that our vulnerable seniors or others with disabilities could be served. I have more questions now than I did even before. I am supportive of the Rideau Community Health Services. Certainly during the pandemic, they stepped up. Big Brothers Big Sisters stepped up. There were a lot of people for our faith-based all stepped up. I don't recall seeing Community Home Support Lanark County in this mix during the response to COVID. So I have more questions now.
Okay, Mayor Pecco.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Alford. I guess when you think of needs in our community, and I know that, like, the last census, which is a bit dated now, but I think it still indicated about 30% of our population lived under the low income measure. And many of those people would not be eligible for CERB, right? They are actually seniors or people who are living on social assistance, and with rising rent in the community, the number of people who are living in a more challenging financial situation today is probably greater than what it was a few years ago, unfortunately. So your point is well taken. I think the whole food security issue is beyond the scope of our discussion tonight. But I think it's something we need to closely examine and then determine when we're looking at 2021 how best to support that, because it's a challenging environment, and we know that the pandemic is far from over, and there's concern obviously that federal programs may not provide the same level of support in the future when do renew, assuming they renew, than in the past. And I think with Rideau Community Health Services, the confidence I have there is if they end up serving 1,000 meals, it will be 1,000 times the cost of those meals. That's $4 a meal. They serve 20,000 accordingly. So it's going to be a matter of what the needs are. Will reflect how much of that grant would be used up for those meals. If the money is not used for a meal, then the MOU with the town, I believe, would suggest that money would come back to the town or be used for rent with the neighborhood when that does initiate.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Councilor McGuire, sorry I missed you.
Thanks, Councilor Brennan. I guess the root of my question is not, like, I've got no qualms about spending the money. It's what's the advantage of going this Rideau Community Health Services route rather than getting Rideau Community Health Services and the community services groups involved with the food security group, so we have one cohesive unit. Like, I think in the past when we had the Lions Club doing the meal the same day as another group, and there wasn't as great of a dialogue going on, it's just this food security groups is a grassroots organization of different faith-based and groups of people wanting to do community meals. And it just seems now we're creating this parallel group. We're giving them just about the same amount of money. And now we've got kind of two parallel organizations or two parallel bureaucracies when we don't even know if the other group needs a top-up. Does anybody have comments on that?
Any other comments? Yes, Mayor Pecco.
Yeah, I mean, the group, the pandemic certainly made it more difficult for this group to meet. And Rideau Community Health Services, when recognizing that when there were meals going out 7 days a week, 3 of those days a meal would not be going out, and no one else was able to take the additional burden of doing that. They weren't sure exactly how they would do it at the time, but they committed to finding a way to make it work. And at this stage, it's a stopgap. It's an interim solution to ensure that meals are still available and delivered. that was part of what St. John was doing and Rideau Community Health Services intends to do as well, is to reach the people who could not be reached, who could not get a meal. So there will be continuing efforts to try to eventually come up with one organization that can oversee the whole food security issue. And Rideau Community Health Services indicated their willingness to do that. They were the applicant for the neighborhood, for the rent. They were going to coordinate that. Still intention to do that. I'm not sure how at this stage and where at this stage, but that would be a partnership working with a variety of faith-based organizations that are doing the meal preparations and distribution. But they were very much willing to be that coordinator and that method of making sure it was going to be sustainable.
Any other comments, questions? I mean, in simplistic terms, we allocated some money through community grants, and part of this grant here was supposed to be to rent space, and that's not going to happen. So the request is to convert that not renting space into food. And am I correct?
Yes.
Basically. So I'm gonna support it on a fundamental basis, and going forward, you know, the discussion that Councillor Alfred brought forward is a great discussion, and you know, I know the president or the teacher at the Salvation Army. He talked to me about the same thing, that there's got to be some more coordination, and they need to be part of the conversation. But in the immediate term, let's get the money out the door for what it's there for, and then let's have a talk about how we're going to bring everything together as we go forward. Yes, that's my view. Councillor Alfred.
Yeah, I'll support giving the money to our CHS, but I agree with Councillor McGuire. We've got community home support, Lanark County. We've got Rideau Healthcare. We've got faith-based. We've got it needs to be put together in one big, much like bringing together on the task force for economic development. You've brought all of those people together, or economic recovery. You've brought all of those people together, and they all have a seat at the table to coordinate their efforts. I too worry about us just piecemealing everything. And when CERB ends, and the food bank is well stocked and well funded right now, hopefully they will still be at the end of this thing in 2021. But if not, the need may again raise its head.
Oh, Jay, you're muted.
Jay, you're muted.
Is there consensus to support what the mayor's brought forward? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So do we need a motion or something at council to do that?
There would be a bylaw brought forward next week to authorize.
Okay.
Yeah, so council did authorize an agreement already, but we'll amend that agreement.
To amend the agreement. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, thank you for that. Now, there's only one more thing, and that we had a piece of correspondence that was posted on the agenda, and we brought that forward into a priority issue because there's a request attached to that, and it's from the Smith Falls Nurse Practitioner-led clinic, and you know, they presented to Committee of Whole in March, and told all the good things they do. What they're asking is, would there be a member of council that would be willing to sit on their board of directors? So that's I brought that forward, and we could talk about that. Whether it's I don't know that we are a funder. We're probably not, and but they're asking for some municipal representation. So I'll put that out there. Okay. Yes, Councillor Dwyer.
Sorry, I kind of assumed that Councillor McKenna was going to jump on board with this because this kind of seems right up his alley. But if he doesn't have an interest in sitting on it, I'd be happy to. I know there are other councillors around the table who are sitting on far more committees than I am at this point anyways. Okay. So I'd be happy to sit on it.
Okay. Now, Senior Morris, you had your hand up. I know Councilor McKenna's got his hand up to rebuff that.
With respect, perhaps the members of council could go, and then I could chime in after that.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead, Councilor McKenna.
Well, I think I'm not sure our municipal council needs to appoint someone to the NPLC. We don't have any formal relationship with them, but that does not prevent Councillor Dwyer from stepping up and volunteering as a citizen. Just because we get asked to appoint somebody doesn't mean we should, or there's nothing. This is a wonderful organization. I've been with them right from day one, helping as much as I could. So they're terrific. I think citizens like you, Councillor Dwyer, should get involved. It's not too onerous, but I'm not sure our municipality should actually name a municipal councillor to sit on.
Okay. So we'll just leave it at that. I mean, I'll leave it up to my council colleagues. Councillor Alfred.
I was just going to ask CEO Morris, is this precedent? I from my recollection from past council, and I think this came up for another group, maybe early in our term, or maybe I'm thinking about a few years ago, where you're right, council does get asked to sit and participate in a lot of things, council to be appointed to it. But I think we have confined, and again, you'll have to guide me, if we don't have some financial dealings with them, we normally don't appoint a member of council. Is that right?
Theo Morris.
Yeah, I mean, typically you would only want a governance representative if you have a stake in the organization. So if it's a library board or police board or RVCA, or there are many out there, health unit. So we fund in some capacity. You fund in some capacity those organizations upon for which you, in return, get a seat at the table and as part of the decision making. Because there is no formal relationship with with the nurse practitioner group, my recommendation would be not to appoint a municipal representative. But again, as a private citizen, that would be the route to go if someone felt strongly that they wanted to be part of the governance model or governance for this organization.
That's a good point. I mean, what we can do here is it's been requested of council if they would love someone from Smith Falls Council to be on their board. That's what they're saying. So if someone wants to go on their board, we don't need to do a resolution or a motion or anything officially, but they're just asking us to show some interest in their organization. So that's what I take from it. We don't need to formalize it in any way, shape, or form. Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you. So in that case, I have no problem in going to sit on the board. I think it's a great organization. I used to be a patient there. And I would like to help them any way I can. But just to be clear, am I going as Councillor Nikki Dwyer, or am I going as resident Nikki Dwyer?
Resident Nikki Dwyer, who happens to be a councillor.
Okay. Because I asked this because I think it's going to complicate things if I am there as a resident, but they have asked someone to be there as a councillor. So the correspondence, can somebody correct me? I don't have it up on my screen. Who was the correspondence originally directed to?
Council.
Council.
To council. Yeah.
Okay. So could I request that staff send back correspondence indicating that we are not appointing somebody for all the reasons that we have just talked about, but that as discussed, I would be interested in sitting on, and then provide them with my personal contact information.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
And just not to complicate it, but that doesn't preclude you from conveying information to us on what's happening over there. Right?
I would draw the similarity that you would do the same thing as a Rotary member.
Yeah.
You are not on Rotary as a member of council,
no,
but you are also a councillor on Rotary.
Or Evergreen Avenue as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although we do get support from the town, but
Okay,
Yeah.
noted. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good for you. Thank you for that. And I believe that's Councillor Alford, do you have your hand up?
I appreciate Nikki doing that because I'm very fond of the nurse practitioner clinic too. But just so we are clear that when next year's appointments come up or following that it's not on the list of. Sometimes that stuff gets it evolves and it winds up on the list of needing a council appointment.
I wouldn't expect so.
We'll let the clerk take care of that when they.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. That's great.
So we've come to the point of the evening, which I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this particular meeting. Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? Thanks for your indulgence tonight. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good one.